Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Otago University of Commerce lecture series number 22. Unfortunately, the organizer of this lecture series, Dr. Clunky, is sick right now. So I will introduce today's lecturer instead of him. We are very honored to have today's speaker, Ian Mambi. Today's talk is word associations and second language vocabulary acquisition. Please.
Thank you. I'm going to start with 3 jokes. So if you know the answer, shout it out. What do you call a fox that lives in a station? Anybody? That's easy. You like it? Not much? Okay. Now you've got the first one. The next 2 are very easy. What do you call a shrimp or prawn that can drive a car? Yes? Somebody? Yeah. You got it, John got it. Okay. One more. This one's the easiest one. What do you call a university for short-tempered people? Very close. Tanki Daigaku. That's where I should be working, I think. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about the idea of L2 proficiency. L2 proficiency is like general ability in a foreign language, and I call it a donut. Can you see the donut? You've got the skills, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and in the middle, traditionally, many classroom practitioners, teachers think of the idea of these skills going into the grammar as the driving force of L2 ability. My son just entered high school this year. He's going to Minami High School in Sapporo. I'm very proud. I'm actually arrogant too, that's why I'm telling you. And it was on Parents' Day, and my wife went to the school, and it was an English class she watched, and the English teacher said that your children already know 70% of the grammar they need to know to master English. 70%, and the parents were thinking, ato 30%, 30% more, and you've fully downloaded the language, and then, everything's done. All right, I'll be thinking about this donut again later, according to the way I see language learning. So I'm going to talk about lexical competence in an L2. So until the 1980s, the study of L2 vocabulary acquisition was a neglected area, according to Mira, 1980. The study of grammar and the universal grammar particularly was the dominant theory, the most important idea in language learning. A lot has changed since then, and now we know that L2 vocabulary knowledge, measured especially in terms of the number of words known, is fundamental to the development of L2 proficiency. And we know this through research, especially into reading. Research indicates that performance on reading tests can be predicted by performance on vocabulary tests. So if you get a group of students of different levels, you get a reading test score and a vocabulary score, and they will correlate pretty closely if you have a wide range of levels. And this has been done many times, many times. There's really no doubt about it anymore. So we're going to talk about the dimensions of lexical competence here. So firstly, size or breadth of vocabulary knowledge is the most important dimension. Most researchers agree. Size, again, meaning the number of words known. And vocabulary size is actually quite easy to measure with vocabulary tests. There are several of them. They use sampling on frequency. And the way to do this, what's allowed this to happen is through computer technology in the last 20, 30 years has allowed for the creation of huge corpora of English, where you get masses of electronic text of thousands of words, and you put them into a big computer, and it counts the number of incidences of all the words. And from this, for example, the British National Corpus, BNC, the most famous one, so you can calculate the 1,000 most common words in English, and then the next 1,000 most common words in English. And by sampling these corpora, you can make simple tests to estimate the overall size of a learner's vocabulary. Here are the 30 most common words in English, the, be, to, of, and they're not very interesting, are they? They're mostly function words, okay? Top 30 words, and you know them, so it's wonderful. But you should be thinking about the top 3,000 and 4,000, 5,000, etc. But I like these words. I made a little conversation out of it. Let's see how it goes. A basic English conversation for you. John says, it's John, the, be, to, of, and, in, that. Those are the most common words in English. Mary says, have I it, for not on with he. John says, as you do at this, but his, by, from, they. Mary says, we say, her, she. That's the best way to remember the most common 30 words in English, by the way. Anyway, here's some more facts for learners of English. How many words do you need to learn in order to communicate in most situations socially? What do you think? A, 500 to 1,000. B, 1,000 to 1,500. C, 1,500 to 2,000. Or 2,000 to 500. 2,500. What do you think, everybody? Think of your answer. Answer is C, not?
A. C.
Yes, actually, they say it's C, but this is a very general guide. But I think the idea is you don't need to know many words in order to be able to survive in an ordinary English conversation, depending on your listening skills, that is. So how many words do Japanese learners learn by the end of senior high school? Try this one. A, B, C, or D, everybody? What's the target that the Monkasho has set for by the end of senior high school? A, B, C, or D? Can you read from the back? Answer is, everybody?
D.
Yeah, I thought it's D. That's right, that's the target. And surprisingly, that is, I've done vocabulary size tests with my learners in Hokai Gakuen University, and that is the average number that they do know when they enter their first year of university. But there's a huge variation. There's some who know twice as many according to my tests. So, how many words do you need to know to read an English novel? This time the actual measurement of a word is slightly different. This time is number of word families, actually. What do you think, A, B, C, or D? How many word families? A word family is just one word and with all the grammatical variations, derivatives, everything. How many word families do you need to know? A, B, C, or D? What do you think?
C.
That it is actually C. Usually, isn't it C? I always go for C. 8,000 word families. Now that's quite a lot more than you need for conversation. Anyway. So we're now going to talk about depth of knowledge. This is depth of vocabulary knowledge. We talked about size or breadth of knowledge. We're going to think about vocabulary in a different way here. Because L2 vocabulary knowledge is not just a question of knowing thousands of words. That's what Reed says. That's his name, by the way, John Reed. Okay, in 2000. And Mira 1996 suggests that lexical organization may be an important dimension, and some researchers call this depth of vocabulary knowledge. Keep this idea in mind, organization, lexical organization. I'm going to be talking about that more later. So researchers have used word association tests to measure what we call network knowledge. So what is word association? When you see or hear a word, it makes you think of another word. That's a fairly simple idea. Most word association tests, or WATs, are productive. There are some receptive ones as well. I won't talk about them, but we're doing productive tests here. In L1, your first language, WATs have been used to compare mentally healthy, normal people with people who have mental disorders. This research was done about 100 years ago, and they found that people with mental disorders produce associations like anger, meadow. You might think that's a little bit strange and say, okay, it's a personal experience of being angry in a meadow, which is a kind of field. But when you get several of these, like butter, soldier, then you realize there's something wrong with the person, the subject. So there are several strands of word association research which come from L1 studies of first language. So in one strand, the strand that I'm going to talk mostly about, responses are measured with norms lists of native speaker responses. In a second strand, responses are classified by type. And these types are, originally they were called paradigmatic, where a response is like a synonym. Okay, you've got high and tall. Well, it's a near synonym anyway. That's called a paradigmatic response type. Or syntagmatic, which is a following word, okay, kick and ball. Or a clang response, which has a phonological similarity with the Q word. In L1 word association research, they found in the 1960s that children with higher IQ produce more paradigmatic responses than their peers with lower IQs, lower levels of intelligence. And in L2 studies, initially there was some evidence that higher level learners produced more paradigmatic responses, but there was other research that showed that it wasn't true. And finally, about 50 years later, this whole strand of research has kind of almost shut down. There's huge problems with the classifications. They're not called paradigmatic anymore, they're called meaning-based, and syntagmatic are now called position-based. But anyway, it's not a promising research field.